We've all heard of feats of strength that happen on the bike, like the 6-day racing at Madison Square Garden or your Sunday Fondo. Thing is, though, while the feat of riding around the neighborhood until you find a place to serve you a cappuccino is extraordinary, in 1910, there was a race that had even the hardened veterans taking the train. 63 riders lined up on the cobblestone streets of Milan. Each breath they took lingered about in the crisp spring air, and whispers of snow on the Turchino passed amongst the peloton. Eugene Christophe, who was a practical and more stern-faced racer than the rest of the bunch, brushed aside those rumors. There was no weather that was going to stop him from getting the prize money that waited in San Remo. The peloton set off into the frozen, rut-filled roads. The racers looked for any landscaping they could to give themselves a reprieve from the harsh vibrations that rattled their frozen bodies. For 50 miles, they destroyed any gardener's hard labor that found its way close to the road. And that's when the Turchino Pass loomed, ominous. Clouds laid in a veil over the peak so that only a few curves and a flurry of snow were visible. Christophe could see up on the switchbacks the winner of the previous year's edition of the Milan-San Remo. He put his head down and stomped on the pedals. The snow blew around him as he passed one racer, then Ghana. Soon the harsh gales made it impossible to see, and the road had built up so much snow that Christophe had to cycle across his bike up the mountain, to which he was an unbeatable force. Christophe reached the tunnel at the top of the pass. Groups of team associates huddled away out of the storm. The Alcyon Dunlop associate informed Christophe that his teammate was in the lead, 2 minutes ahead of him. Christophe pressed on and saw his teammate at the end of the tunnel, staring into the blizzard that churned outside. He informed Christophe that he was finished, to which Christophe replied by pedaling out into the storm for the treacherous descent off the mountain. The cold had taken its toll on Christophe. A few miles down the hill, he dismounted his bike and pushed it through the snow. One hand clutched his stomach as the cramps had become unbearable. He pushed until his legs gave up, and he laid down on a rock on the side of the road. He stared at an inn just a few hundred feet away, but couldn't get himself to move. The innkeeper, luckily, saw Christophe collapse and went into the snow to retrieve the ice cube. He drug him into the warm inn, much to the dismay of the patrons. Christophe stripped off his waterlogged wool kit and did jumping jacks in front of the fire. 20 minutes later, Christophe's teammates burst into the inn and thawed out on the fire. This put Christophe on edge, as he lost his lead and his prize was now at risk. The innkeeper refused to let Christophe go out into the storm to finish, but with the promise to put his clothes back on and take a train to San Remo, he continued his race. Christophe carried on, his bike crunching and grinding with every pedal. Mud filled his bearings, but the push to the finish drove him. He reached a town 50 miles outside of San Remo. A teammate waited at the train station. Christophe took his teammate's bike and pressed on, catching and passing the racer in front of him. A warm Mediterranean breeze had given a new vigor to Christophe as he entered the last checkpoint, where he met with his team manager. He was told that Luigi Ganna, who would win the Giro d'Italia a month later, had just passed through. It wasn't before they had left town that Christophe passed Ganna and was on the long road to San Remo. Christophe would ride alone. Christophe would ride in alone 12 hours after he had started. Only 3 others would finish the race, and Christophe would have to stay in the hospital for the rest of the month to treat his frostbite. The 1910 Milan-San Remo is without doubt the toughest race in the history of cycling. The lack of support, the wool kits they wore, and the heavy single-speed monsters they rode are what set it apart from the tortuous races of today. This makes Eugene Christophe the toughest racer of all time.